Good evening, sir.
Evening.
Thanks very much for your time. So you're raising your hand here. Tell us what you believe are the reasons, our SOEs are in the mess they are in.
Well, there's no doubt, Rio, that over the past several years, we took our eye off the ball as a country, and a lack of governance, and a lack of attention to not only detail but strategies that underpin the economy are at the very centre of the problems that have now bedeviled these SOEs for some time, and they've now come home to roost. Eskom is the most significant example of it, but not the only one, as you've properly indicated. And unless and until such time as we shore them up, and when I say we, I mean South Africa at large, then they're going to actually challenge all of the prospects that we have as a country and undermine the real opportunities that we have.
Well, state-owned enterprises, which means they report to political principals, some of whom have actually been found to have been, the cause of many SOEs' downfall. Do you not think that it's about time we tempered with that relationship, the reporting lines as well?
Well, there's no doubt that we need to very carefully consider which SOEs are appropriate to be in public ownership. And in that context, that we have appropriate oversight, not just in terms of suitably competent and qualified boards and executive, but at the level of the shareholder. There's no doubt that Minister Gordhan, for example, has taken very seriously the challenges that confront him with some of those state-owned enterprises, such as Transnet, Eskom, SAA, but it applies much more broadly than just those state-owned enterprises within his portfolio. And maybe, as you suggest, we need to reset the relationship between shareholder and the underlying state-owned enterprises, and we need to redefine the way in which those SOEs contribute to and participate in the economy.
Well, sir, you look at how board members get appointed, the powerful ministers are able to send messages or give directives to their members in Parliament, which is a legislature that should really be playing that oversight role. But the way things happen in real life is that the minister would tell them his or her preferences, and when they do their interviews for people who should be on boards of these SOEs, they then know what's the right thing to do. And those board members know for a fact that they are there, or they're at the mercy of these politicians. Isn't that something that we need to deal with?
Yes, these board members, they need to serve on those boards as the responsible accounting officers without fear or favour. And they must be selected on the basis of competence, credibility, capability and experience. And a more transparent process is absolutely crucial, because the credibility of many of these SOEs now, and indeed the country, hinges on the credibility of board members who can bring their experience and insight to bear and act with appropriate authority without undue interference by ministers, and who can demonstrate that they have the ability to navigate very challenged SOEs in some cases to safe harbour.
What about the caliber of people that politicians often either deploy or consent to them being the leaders of these SOEs?
Well, I think the same applies. We need to actually eradicate the concept of cadre deployment unless those cadres are actually seen to be both competent and capable. They bring the necessary experience, and they have the interests only of the country at heart, rather than a narrow aspect of a country's either polity or economy.
What about, both the numbers of people that some of these SOEs, employ? Because realize that a lot of the unions, while they agree with what needs to be done, they stop where they believe that there is, in fact, a possibility or a reality of having to, cut down on the numbers of people you have in them? What are the sort of conversations that should take place, one, to allay their fears, but at the same time to get them to accept the reality that some of these SOEs are, in fact, bloated, and in other instances they need technology, perhaps less so, or less people, as by way of bodies to actually be there?
Well, there are two conflicting issues, and you've raised one of them very starkly. We have a huge challenge of unemployment in this country, and we certainly don't want to create further unemployment. We need to make sure that all people are gainfully employed. But gainfully employed surely means that they're put into appropriate operating structures that are fit for purpose. If, in fact, there are too many employees or inappropriately qualified employees in a particular operation, they need to be redeployed elsewhere. We need to give the necessary reassurance, not only to organised labour, but I think to the country at large, that people will not be mercilessly put out on the streets, that they will be found gainful employment. But it doesn't necessarily mean that they need to stay with the same state-owned enterprise, or indeed in the private sector with the same companies. We need to ensure that we have a competitive and productive economy, which means that our state-owned enterprises and our companies more broadly, as I said, need to be fit for purpose and have operating models that are suitable for those circumstances. And that includes the number of people and the people, the right people that they employ.
I'll take a couple, of these SOEs. Let's take SAA as an example. Do you believe there's a business case for SAA?
Well, I'm conflicted because, as you know, I sit on the board of SAA.
That's precisely why I decided to ask.
That, and I wouldn't speak in a manner that's not aligned with the company. We have got a business plan and a long-term turnaround strategy that we've placed in front of government that we believe in fully. To achieve that, we need to have the right complement of staff. We're currently recruiting for them. We need to have a supportive shareholder. We're in an ongoing dialogue with the Minister of Public Enterprises, and we need to have access to capital to enable us to implement that turnaround strategy, and that's an ongoing discussion both with government as well as with our current providers of capital. But it's a very challenging situation. SAA operates in an openly competitive environment with many competitors who don't have some of the constraints that we have to operate under, and we need to bring that to the attention of all stakeholders as well.
But, should they be, or whatever sort of rescue plans be financed by the taxpayer? Given the enormous challenges that we have, should we be throwing money into this, what appears to be a bottomless pit?
Well, I agree with you. We've put what we believe to be a viable turnaround strategy in front of government, but that does require all of the component elements that I've already talked about. Should it be a net consumer of capital from the taxpayer? Absolutely not. We think that we can return money to the government over time. But that's a long-term investment, and we as a country have to decide whether we're going to take the difficult decisions to make those long-term investments and endure the pain in the interim to achieve those turnarounds.
Eskom, quickly.
Well, Eskom has a very similar problem. It's even more fundamental to the well-being of the economy. I think the chairman and the board have made it clear that it needs to be right-sized. We certainly, as a business, support the reorganization or restructuring of Eskom to ensure that it's more competitive and fit for purpose. It presents, I believe, the most significant single threat to the stability of the economy as we sit here today.
That's where we're going to leave it. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much.
Coming through and sharing your thoughts. Rothschild and Company's South Africa Executive Chairman, Martin Kingston.